What is up, all of you beautiful people, and welcome back to the No Name Baseball Podcast with my buddy Adam Rosenberg and myself, Robert Donaldson. You can give us a follow on Twitter at RobDFB for me and at Hey Rosenberg for Adam. And Adam, we are in the midst of a very interesting baseball stretch where we have a lot of good teams that are historically great, just kind of faltering. You look at the Yankees, you look at the Padres, Mets, Cardinals, and then you look at teams like the Reds, all of a sudden winners of 11 straight games, and you have some teams that are just surging up the boards like the Marlins and the D-backs. What in the world is going on in the baseball world? Because it feels like everything that we know is just probably wrong, and we should just assume that's going to be the case the rest of the way.
Well, the first thing, hey, Rob, it's good to see you again.
Hey,
The first thing that everybody should obviously do is assume that this is exactly what everything is going to look like 3 months from now, because that is definitely the way to make it work. It is not as if there's going to be a whole summer. It's pretty interesting because in the same week that the Reds seem to have been coronated as the NL Central champs already, the Pirates pretty much buried themselves. But that's a different discussion. I think the Pirates are who we thought they were. Look, there's teams across the board that are kind of all over the place. The Mets discovered an offense for a couple days. I think we believed in the Cardinals again. We may still do that if they stop messing around with their batting order. But look, it's early. Teams, this is the part of the season where you start to see the inevitable, like this team has a 9-game winning streak. I mean, the Braves and the Phillies both had 6-game winning streaks going into their game yesterday. Look, it's still early. There's a lot that can happen. There are a lot of approaches from a betting perspective to when you see teams that are rolling. Like when teams get past an 8-game win streak and it starts rolling, it's actually not a good idea to fade, just because things are in such a rhythm that there's stats that back this up. But when you get those teams like the historic like A's run that happened, and I believe the Guardians had one too, but everybody had like these 15+ game winning streaks. Jump on it, because because these are all players are creatures of habit and they're not moving. Like the worst thing that could happen is an off day, which by the way is another thing that we've seen lately, is that those top teams that were playing the most games in the short period of time kind of started floundering around. The Rays weren't doing so great. Rangers are still living and dying by the long ball, but there's so much depth it may not matter. But look, baseball's great, and I believe today we're a little less than a month from All-Star break too, so pretty wild. Yeah,
the season's kind of unwinding, and we look at this point like it's still early in the season, and there's a lot of ground to be made up. But you look at some of these teams, and they're digging themselves some massive holes, like the Mets in particular. I mean, they're 13.5 back in the NL East, and when you think about that as well, it's not like this is a tight, NL East outside of just that the Braves kind of spearheading it this year. The Marlins are 42-33, and the Phillies are 3 games over 500. I mean, the Mets are in deep trouble. Obviously, the highest paid roster in the league, and then you look at teams in the NL Central. That's a division that's wide open, but the Cardinals are still 9 games back, and they're running into the issue of the Reds may never lose another game. That's just kind of how it feels. And so
they're only 5 games. Just so everyone knows, they're only 5 games over 500, which is not even it's not even the 6th best record in the league. It's not even the 7th best record in the league. But yes, continue, and people are still, and the Diamondbacks are still 5-1 to win the division and have a 3-game lead and are 15 games over 500. Unreal.
Right, and you talk about the Diamondbacks having a 3-game lead. It's not over the Dodgers.
Nope.
It's not over the Padres. It's over the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah.
So it's bizarro land. It really is, because what we think we know, we don't. And a lot of these teams are healthy and they're just not doing well. Now, a team that is really struggling and they aren't healthy are the New York Yankees. And let's kind of give them some spotlight right now, because obviously high paid lineup, high paid roster. There's a lot of guys like Severino have come back in the fold, and guys like Nestor and Aaron Judge and Harrison Bader who have left the fold. And now they're trying to integrate a mixture of young guys who were young guys to start the year and they were on the roster to start the year, and now guys that were being called up from AAA, and it just doesn't feel like it's meshing at all across the
Mhm.
board. There's no synergy in that offense, and even guys that are coming back in the fold like Severino are really struggling right now. They're probably one of the bottom pitchers in the league in terms of guys holding down roster or rotation spots. So take me through how you even gauge where these New York Yankees are at, and is there any life for them if this division just keeps doing what it's doing and keeps winning games?
So it's interesting because I noticed tonight that Volpe was moved down to ninth in the batting order.
Hmm.
That's how bad it's gotten. And
Yeah.
McKinney, who I had for some reason thought in my head was like some young dude who like was an up and coming. No, 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 dude. That guy has literally been on like 18 different organizations and is a journeyman. He's by the way mashing the ball right now.
Yes.
But look, the Yankees are paying Aaron Hicks $30 million to go away to put to bat 300 for the Orioles. Um, it's not a good the Yankees lineup. This doesn't if anything, my biggest takeaway is is that the slander that I gave Aaron Judge when he won MVP is not really warranted because that guy offered these are the little things that get done, like the pitches that everyone else sees in that lineup because Aaron Judge is not there at the top to protect them is unreal because everyone's plummeted. I thought we were going to get our annual Anthony Rizzo back injury in July. We got it actually in early June, but he is no pun intended back now. But you know when no one looks comfortable in at bats, you and I both know that Aaron Boone just isn't a he's not frankly not a good manager. And it's just like that. I think like the way that a lot of guys have been mismanaged, it's almost like AL Cardinals in certain ways. If you're the Yankees, you've been in this hole before. We talked about how people were in holes in June before. The Yankees were in a hole just like this. I want to say I don't know if it was 21 maybe when and they crawled back out. They tend to sometimes do this. Last year they were obviously like running it all year, but they do this. I think the problem is though another team that is still not getting respect has the third best record in baseball, not in the division, but in baseball is ahead of them, and that is the Baltimore Orioles. The problem that the Yankees have is the Yankees don't have to just look in front of them and be like, you know what, we'll get by. It's going to be us and the Rays and us and whoever. The Orioles are on the tail. The wildly mediocre Red Sox team still have still are I believe flat odds to make the playoffs, even though this I will be on record as a wildly mediocre team. And like I said, the Baltimore Orioles are still hanging there, and the Rays are still doing what the Rays do at home. So the Yankees are going to have some trouble here. And I didn't even think about till today. I like is Nestor hurt? I feel like I haven't seen
Yep.
him. I don't even know who's been pitching for the Yankees other than Garrett Cole. It's just been kind of a passing through. I saw Brito started tonight, so it got bad. So yeah,
Yeah, man. And even when you're kind of talking about the teams that are ahead of them, like Tampa Bay and Baltimore, you're not even mentioning the teams that are below them who, one, the Toronto Blue Jays have the same amount of wins, and then right below the Toronto Blue Jays are the 4 games over 500 Boston Red Sox in
that's
last
right.
place.
Yep.
So, and the Red Sox literally just swept the Yankees last week. So, it's just a very peculiar spot for the Yankees, and right now in their lineup day to day, they could have 7 infielders playing outfield spot, like playing in the outfield, playing everywhere, DHing it. It's just a mess. None of these guys are classically trained at their positions. It just feels like a conglomeration of guys that maybe can fit here. So we're going to try to make them fit here, but they can't really hit. So what's the point in forcing a square peg in a round hole at the same time? It just, we talk about the Cardinals being a mess. They are definitely a mess. But somehow, I will give credit where credit's due. The Yankees are still 8 games over 500, but it is definitely plummeting from that trajectory, and especially because they kind of built that lead out of the gate, and now it's starting to kind of get in the dicey territory, I think. But
Yeah.
as we kind of go down and look at some of these other teams, one of the more the probably the most intriguing team right now in baseball is the Cincinnati Reds.
Yep.
They've won 11 straight games, and they've been doing it on the heels of kind of meh pitching, but their lineup is just getting it done. Like today, we're recording this on Wednesday, June 21st, and they were playing the Rockies in a day game, and they had an early deficit, but their offense, they came alive when it needed to. They scored runs late in that fifth inning, and it just felt like a waterfall of runs at that point. And yes, it is the Rockies, but they've been doing this to kind of a lot of teams. They've been doing this to the Astros. They've had some quality wins on this stretch. And so just give me your thoughts. We talked about the Reds to exhaustion already on this podcast.
Yeah, this is the
But
second because we talked about him Ellie week too. This is
yeah,
another time.
yeah, 2 weeks ago we just talked about the Reds, and we were talking about how wide open the NL Central is, and can this team make the playoffs? Well, now at first that was kind of a hot take. It really was, because the Brewers are still spearing the head in the division. The Pirates were right ahead of them as well, and it kind of felt like the Cardinals were within reach of potentially getting to their spot where the Reds were. Now it feels like a lot of people are starting to drink that Cincinnati Reds Kool-Aid, because all these prospects that have come up and done well, and they still have more to come as well throughout the season. So take me through your Reds vantage point again, just kind of a refresh. How serious should we be taking this team that's 5 games over 500 and leading the NL Central?
So what's interesting about the Reds is that they're not getting it from their starting pitching. They're actually their bullpen, which was meh, has kind of turned it around to become steady, which has allowed their offense to be able to come back in all these games that they get down. But it's funny, this team reminds me a lot of the Baltimore Orioles last year, that kind of had a lot of young guys that finally came together and started getting everybody excited. And then, faded a little bit down the stretch just because these are guys that have played 140, 130 game seasons, or some of them just coming out of college, and then now they're playing they're the whole 162. Look, I do think that because the division they happen to be in, that the Reds still have a chance to do things. I'm not necessarily fading them right now, but I also will not be surprised to watch a team like the Cardinals overtake them or do something like that. And actually, this makes me think we should kind of do like a pod bet right now. How many wins do you think that we could set a line, or we could do whatever. Let's set a line for it. Over under 84.5 wins, the winner of the NL Central will have.
I'll go over. I will.
Okay.
I mean, right now you look at the teams that are kind of near the top, and I won't even include the Cardinals in it, but the Cardinals are on a little bit of a streak right now. But you
Mm-hmm.
look at the Cubs over their last 10, they're 8-2. You look at
Yeah.
the Reds, 10-0, and the Brewers are still right there, and they do, I think, have enough pitching capability where they could go on a little bit of a run their own. I think that offense is going to hamstring them, but I do think that the Reds, the Cubs, especially the Cubs, I don't think people realize how close that team is and how healthy they're just going to continue to get, because Kyle Hendricks looks like vintage Kyle Hendricks right now. Marcus Stroman has been doing his thing, and they have a bunch of pitchers, Justin Steele, who's coming back in the fold, who I really do think they're only about one, maybe even at two, 1.5 type trades away from being the real stronghold on this division right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think last week when we did this pod, the Cubs were the best hitting team over the past week, and they're still continuing to do that. I'm interested to see. It's funny because that lineup, the top of the order hits well, the bottom of the order hits well, the middle of that order and is kind of hit or miss for me. And that middle of the order being like Cody, being Swanson, already controlling it. So I'm interested to see how things look with that team if Swanson's out for an extended period of time, just because of that middle of that order. Because again, when guys like Cody's essentially an automatic out, and so I don't know what that does for when you're pitching to Ian. But the biggest thing that I just want to not hear anymore from the Cubs, I don't want to hear them about trading Marcus Stroman, because Marcus Stroman was such an incredible pickup for them and looks awesome. I would say arguably he's the best pitcher on their staff, and looked absolutely fantastic the other night against the Pirates. And there's talk about them possibly trading him as a trade chip. I mean, the Cubs also in their situation, it's very similar to where the Phillies were really the last couple of years, where they spent enough money and they did enough things that they can't sell, and they better be trying to move things forward so that they can do this. And it's wide open for them. So look, I went on some other programs last week. Like I like the Cubs in this division. I think that the Cubs have a lot of that upside. I think that, like you said, I think that they have good pitching that can kind of come together. I think their bullpen's a little bit of a mess, and I'd love to see them acquire a couple pieces. It would be, I know we'll probably do a trade deadline show, but I think maybe doing a deal with the Royals and maybe getting a Chapman or getting some of these guys in there might not be bad for them. But I do like what's happening with the Cubs. I am, though, yellow caution flag of what may happen within that middle of that order. And I really want to see someone on that team just kind of take over offensively and start just rolling, kind of like Cody was right out of the gate in April.
Yeah, and I do think there's a number of guys who could. I think Ian Happ has the potential. Say a Suzuki. We've already seen it from Christopher Morel for a multi-week stretch. Obviously, Dansby Swanson, Nico Horner, and that's a
Nico had a night or day, whatever it was, a day game.
yeah.
Nico, he had triples in two
Well,
straight games.
yeah, Nico's been rolling all season, it feels
Yeah.
like. Maybe not with the hard hit percentages, but he's been getting on base even when he's not smacking the
Yep.
ball well. And same with Dansby. And like I said, I'm very bullish on the Cubs. This is coming from a Cardinals fan, by the way, guys. I'm a full believer in this Cubs team being about 1.5 trades away. I think if they had another bat and maybe another quality starting pitcher, because right now their bottom two guys are Drew Smiley and Jameson Tyone. And these are two guys who, under the hood, really have not been terrible. And those, if that's their bottom two in the rotation, that just feels like you are in a really, really good spot. I do think the bullpen is kind of where the issues arise, and that's why I do think adding some arm, maybe moving a Jameson Tyone to a long relief spot, or maybe even Drew Smiley. I doubt that one happens, but I do think they are not very far away. And with this being wide open, place your futures right now on the Cubs, and I think you're gonna be pretty happy. But
Yeah, I think
let
they're still sitting there at like 5-1, and I think it's a good buy. They also, the other thing that I would say that they need is probably they lack they need some folks who can solidly hit left-handed pitching. That seems to be somewhat of a gap in certain areas for them. I mean, there's just the guys who they were relying on for that cannot do it anymore. And I honestly think that they need to get Patrick Wisdom off this team, like just get him away from the field right now. But you're right. They're closer than other teams in that. They're closer than the Pirates, closer than the Cardinals. They have a lot of their stuff together.
Yeah. And with that, I say we segue into our trivia. We do this every
Okay.
single week, y'all, and we just kind of lay out some advanced numbers or even just kind of whatever context clues we want about a guy, or maybe even a lineup. Just kind of whatever comes to our mind, and you guys can guess along with us while I kind of propose my player or my lineup to Adam and vice versa. And we've had a lot of fun with this, and this has been really kind of cool to shine light on maybe guys that are doing a lot better than you might think, and also just to shine light on guys who are getting criminally overlooked in terms of betting angles or even just play on the baseball field. So I will actually let you lead off to start
All
on
right.
this one. We're gonna switch up the order here and lay it on me. What do you got?
All right. Oh, wait. Oh, Donnie just gave one up to Freddie. On June 1st, I was in the top 10 in hard contact rate. I was 1-6 with an ERA over 6, and a K rate was just hovering around 10%. Since then, my K rate, I've struck out 45% of my batters. And I have an ERA of a minuscule ERA of 0.47, bottom 10 in hard contact rate over this time. Who am I? Who has turned it around significantly since June 1st, especially with an incredibly high K rate?
That is a good one, and I feel like I should know this. I'm gonna go Shane Bieber.
Nope. Close. Same kind of era. Yeah. And it was for the second straight week. I'm giving you a San Diego Padre. It is Blake Snell. Blake Snell, who last week you came on this pod and you mentioned, great angle to look for is that you're playing against his old team, taking the outs, which actually didn't even occur to me at the time that this is a throwback to what happened with them in the World Series. But Blake Snell has massively turned it around, especially on the strikeout end. I mean, this Padres team, which, I wouldn't necessarily say buy for the division or things like that, has turned around, has started hitting. Soto hit a couple bombs the other night, but from the pitching end, Musgrove, Snell, Waka. They're getting a lot of really, really good stuff out of these guys. They've gotten good stuff out of Waka all year, actually, and he's a very underrated guy. But the Blake Snell turnaround, who has been a darling to basically fade for a year or two, has been very significant. Especially, it's an eye popping K rate, and just the fact that he went from top 10 hardest hit to bottom 10 hardest hit to top 10. Absolutely fantastic for Blake Snell.
Yeah, and Blake Snell, I mean, this is a guy who at the beginning of the year was definitely on my fade list, and deservedly so. He was getting smacked around, he wasn't going deep, he had really inefficient pitch counts. And this past four starts that he's had have been lights out. He's always had that strikeout stuff. And in terms of the advanced numbers that some people look at, you could with baseball it's amazing because you can really look at so many different categories to analyze and find your niche of how you can determine whether or not somebody's actually good under the hood. You know, we always say that, and we always reference advanced numbers. Well, there's hundreds you can pick from, and there's probably people that have found their own little formula that works great for them. And with Blake Snell, one of the things that people were always drawn to were his movements, his velocities, and just kind of the individual pitches and how they were so different characteristically than a lot of these other guys, especially as a lefty. And those strikeouts are really starting to materialize this year, and it's now lining up with the advanced numbers that I personally like to look at as well. So yeah, rest of the season, Blake Snell is no longer a fade. I really do think he's a guy you want to be backing, and it's really shown over his last four or
Yeah.
five starts. But let's go over into this next one here,
All right.
and I'm going a little bit off the wall. I'll just kind of tell you
Okay.
that much right now, and
Okay.
I'll cut it down in half for you as well, just
Sure.
kind of like I did last week. But this NL outfielder journeyman, so NL outfielder journeyman, over since June 5th, is third in Major League Baseball in terms of hard hit percentage. He is stinging the ball over the diamond. It's going both left, center, and right. The scatter patterns are everywhere. It's pretty even balanced across the board. And in addition, he has not been really hitting a lot of home runs, but a lot of doubles, a lot of stolen bases, and he's also part of a surging lineup right now. Who is this outfielder journeyman NL player?
The resurgent lineup is kind of the tell. Okay, let me think, because originally I was gonna say, is it Jason Hayward, but the Dodgers have kind of been playing all season. Is it's a journeyman outfielder. I'm running through. Um, let me see. I gotta look at teams and just see what I'm thinking. Like, I'm not looking at the lineups. Is it um there's the teams that are in the NL that have been good all year is sort of what okay, okay, here is it I mean, they've kind of been good all season, but is it Kettle or Kettle? Is it Marte or no?
It is not. It is Tommy Pham.
Oh,
Tommy
wow.
Pham
It's a
has
Met.
been absolutely roping the ball, and the reason why I say resurging lineup. So to kind of put that in perspective, obviously Pete Alonso is back now, which was a very fast turnaround for that guy because everybody was thinking doomsday scenario, 6 to 8 weeks, and all of a sudden now he's back in the lineup. But this Mets offense over the past 2 weeks now, maybe a week and a half, has really been putting up a lot of runs. Francisco Lindor himself is second in the hard hit percentage category since June 5th. And if you even scroll down the list to 23rd, Starling Marte is making an appearance. And obviously, Pete Alonso coming off of an injury, but you have to kind of assume he's going to be picking up right where he left off once he kind of gets a little bit more acclimated back to the lineup and a little bit more healthy. So you're looking at four, and even I would say five guys with Brandon Nimmo in there as well, who I haven't really loved this season ever under the hood, but he is still a guy who can get on base at a high clip and kind of do his job in a leadoff role. So you're looking at five guys in that Mets lineup that are kind of trending upwards. And Tommy Pham, journeyman man. I mean, he's been on a different team the last 4 years,
Yeah.
each individual season, and he's just roping the ball right now. He's only hitting 260 on the year, so I think a lot of his props are really undervalued, but look for Tommy Pham to keep doing some damage and bet his total bases, bet his hits plus runs plus RBIs, and I think you're gonna be happy with it.
Yeah, and if I'm just double checking it because I tend to sometimes look at it, but yeah, he's also just he's been very good against lefties. You're right on him. Like him and Lindor, I feel like have kind of resurged over the last week and a half. And I'm with you on Nimmo. Nimmo had a horrific night the other night while everyone else on the team was hitting. He was 0 for 5 with 3 Ks. And I actually had high hopes for Nimmo going into the season just because of what he did last year and basically the time that he got an extension. I liked him with that Mets lineup to lead the league in runs. I was very big on Nimmo. But if they can get rolling, I think that's great. And like Tommy Pham does all this, and I believe isn't Tommy Pham, or wasn't he at one point legally blind in one eye or
Yeah,
something?
still is.
Yeah, there you go. So I
Yep.
mean, even better. But yes, Tommy Pham, that's a good one. I didn't realize it was. I guess I didn't realize it was still playing that. I thought it was DHing. So no, that's awesome. That's a good one.
Yeah, and throughout Tommy's career, we've seen spots where he's gone on month-long stretches of just being an absolute terrorizer for pitching because listen, he is a fast guy. He has a level swing path, and for some reason, he just has like this weird opposite field pop to him as well. So he can really hit anybody, and he has been hitting a lot of people. But I will toss it to you on the next player lineup, whatever you got for me here.
All right. So this guy over the last week is batting 458. He's got a home run, 6 RBIs. From a betting perspective, he has been a HRR, which is hits, runs, RBIs machine. He's hit it in 9 straight games. He's hit it in 15 out of his last 20. You're never going to see him at the top of the order, though. He's having absolutely a career year. But probably nobody knows who he is, especially on this team. Who is he?
Hmm, that is a good one. For some reason, that does sound like Brandon Marsh to me.
No, but I'll give you a hint. He has
Okay.
the same initials as somebody else on his team.
Same initials as someone else on his team. Give me a
Just the first and
give me a
last,
league. Give
first
me
and
a
last.
league.
NL. He's in the NL.
NL. Oh my gosh. Okay.
He's crushing it
Hold
over the
on.
last week. Not in the top of the order. Same initials as another, same first and last initials as another guy on the team. And I guarantee that nobody's looking at this guy, and he's absolutely having a career year.
All right, I'm gonna take a big stab in the dark here, and I'm gonna go Joey Weimer. Weimer.
No, but that's a good one. It's Orlando Arcia on the
Oh my
Braves,
gosh.
who
Okay.
is who is
Ozzy
who
Albies.
obviously Ozzy
Gotcha.
Albies. And so he is absolutely obliterating the ball on a consistent basis. The dude bats eighth or ninth. And that's part of the thing that is really dangerous about this Braves lineup is that the Braves lineup doesn't have holes in it because you have a guy who's batting 450, batting eighth, or sometimes batting switching out and batting ninth when it's against lefties. So anyway, he's part of this Mets lineup that's stacked. The thing or this Braves lineup that's been pretty stacked. But something that I had noticed for a while and then it's kind of adjusted itself or like really kind of came to a head the other night is Sean Murphy was in and out of that. Sean Murphy, who I thought was a key
Mm-hmm.
acquisition for that team, in and out of the lineup. I started noticing a month ago, not playing, essentially NBAing season, not playing back to backs, which as a catcher you get worried. And then the other, I believe 4 days ago, he got pulled out and he's had an MRI on his hamstring and they're kind of resting it. And he says he has a major inflammation. So that I'm not saying this has like this is a mattering on immediate impact. Like the immediate betting impact is that former Phillies prospect Travis d'Arnaud is terrible for steals. So I think that any opponent for against the Braves, the steals prop is in play. But Sean Murphy's a big bat in that lineup, and him not being there for an extended period of time, like they re-signed him. There's a big extension there. I think that's a big deal as we get to the second half of the season. But look, when the Braves have guys in the 8 and 9 hole, who are able to do this and get on base like that, it just kind of makes you think like, where is the hole and how do you beat that team? So
Yeah, that's a real good one. And you're right about Sean Murphy, too. I feel like this catcher free agent market from this past year has just kind of been a little bit underwhelming, to say the
Very, yeah,
least.
very much so.
Um, but all right, I'll give you this last one here, and it is going to
Okay.
be a pitcher.
Okay.
I'm not going to give you the league because I feel like that might be too much of a giveaway. We'll see. We'll
Okay.
see how you're working it. But over his last three outings, this pitcher is bottom in Major League Baseball in terms of starting pitchers and allowing hard hit percentage, 51.5% over those three starts. In addition, over those three starts, he has not been able to escape a game without allowing a home run, allowing five in those three starts. And this pitcher has also allowed at least three earned runs in all three starts as well, with two of them being four earned. Who is this pitcher?
Is it Kevin Gausman?
It's a good guess, but it's actually Nathan Eovaldi.
That was gonna be my second guess. I mean, it was gonna, I'm like, it's either Ivaldi or it's Gausman because that is which you know, these guys are darlings of baseball Twitter. That is and I get asked this a lot. I'm sure you do too. They say, what's a quote unquote bad hard hit percentage? 3 straight weeks of a 50% or more hard hit percentage is very, very bad. That is that
Yeah,
is not something I'm going to ever back. And yes, people say, well, but he won today. But you got to look under what's going on between that because he also won today while giving up contact against a bottom hitting team in the Marlins. The Marlins are not a good hitting team. So if you
yeah.
are doing that, it is there are other problems at play here.
Yeah, and what's kind of crazy about Eovaldi in particular is obviously, in the first two-thirds of the season, he was cruising. He was looking fantastic, even under the hood. It wasn't just like he was skating by and getting kind of lucky like some of these, Bryce Elder types, for example. I hate that I keep shitting on Bryce Elder. I don't hate him personally.
Starting tomorrow
Yeah,
against the Phillies. So
that's why I'm bringing it up. And I will say, it's just with Eovaldi, people have to realize baseball is a game of streaks. You play so often that you are going to go through cycles of good and bad play. And I do expect Eovaldi at some point to break back into the good play section. That's why he's getting paid so much money, is because he's done this over the course of his
yeah,
career. But all starting pitchers do this. It's not like everybody's vintage Verlander, vintage Scherzer, or vintage Kershaw. You'll have guys who are the tier, maybe a couple tiers below that, who will give you great play 75% of the time. But if you can capitalize in terms of just betting angles for that 25% pockets throughout the season, and those don't just happen over one long streak, there's going to be a time where Eovaldi gets back on the horse, starts pitching well again, and then he's going to fall off for a few games. And right now, this is the prime spot. And you kind of mentioned another one, Kevin Gossman. If you want to take a big name pitcher and just kind of go against him and bet against him and get a lot of value, right now, Eovaldi is the best extracting value in Major League Baseball, in my opinion, because of how hard he's getting hit, combined with how good that Rangers lineup is and how many wins they have under the belt. And Kevin Gossman, similar, because a lot of people loved him to be a Cy Young candidate this year, and they still probably a lot of them consider him to still be in that territory. So those are
the
just a
top
couple
two. I mean,
guys
top
that,
two in the strikeouts. Yeah,
yeah. So if you want to kind of extract value over these next two or three starts from those guys, I would definitely recommend doing so. But um, yeah,
and those two guys in particular, I would also. They're always going to have. They play in little league field. They play in stadiums built to give up home runs. So keep in mind that they're probably going to have different splits on the road than they will at home. And this isn't us saying fade them every single week. It's just saying look at
be
splits,
wary.
look at how people have been doing things. To be honest, and just go with what the data is that it's giving you. I mean, we talked before about Shane Bieber. Shane Bieber started off on our fade list, and Shane Bieber has very, very confidently earned his way off of that fade list. He has a below 20% hard hit rate for, I believe, a month. And I can't overstate this enough. And you have said it, and we like a lot of folks said it. Wins and losses and ERA does not matter. The single most important metric on both sides of the ball is going to be hard hit rate, whether you are a batter, whether you are a pitcher. Pay attention to that.
Those always tell the story, in my opinion. That's the formula that I've kind of settled into. Look at the hard hit percentages; those will balance out over time. You can't avoid them. You just
Mhm.
can't.
Yep.
When Bryce Miller was coming in and starting off hot, 3 or 4 starts in, and he hadn't really been touched up a whole lot. 2 of those starts were against the horrible Oakland A's at the time. And also, it was just kind of like he was skating by, allowing a lot of base runners and not getting paid, not paying for it. Well, look at what happened in his next 3 or 4 starts. I mean, he was barely getting out of the 4th inning. And that's just how it is. It's very telling, especially if you're trying to gauge, can this offense put up numbers? Look at the Cardinals when they were, struggling to score runs. Their hard hit percentages were the best in baseball. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, over a 5-game stretch, the past 5 games, they've just been absolutely on fire, on a tear in terms of offense. Not today, but that's a
No.
whole different story.
But that's
But
another example. But that's another time. I mean, Trevor Williams over the last 3 weeks had given up
yeah,
6 home runs in 3 games. I mean, it's been insane. And then today, lights out for
hmm
and lights out against a lineup that had been hitting for the last few days. You and
not
I
to
believe both.
mention,
Go ahead.
yeah, not to mention his last time out was against the Atlanta Braves, and they won that game too.
Yeah,
Trevor
yeah,
Williams, listen, say what you want about him as a human being. I mean, you might have your own thoughts on that, but as a pitcher, when he's on the bump and he's playing in a game, he is one of the best backs in Major League Baseball by far this season because the Nats do suck as a team. I mean, don't get that misconstrued, but when he's on the bump, they have a chance every single time, and this lineup doesn't strike out. So if you have a guy on the bump who's given up a lot of hard contact and not striking out a lot of guys, the Nats are going to put balls in play. And Trevor Williams on the other side is going to give you 5 or 6 innings of relatively positive baseball. And
yeah.
that's really all you want from a guy on a team like the Nationals. And that's what we've seen from Jordan Lyles, but the lineup just never supports him, unlike Trevor Williams, who they've actually been stepping up for him a little bit here.
Yeah, yeah. It's well, it'll be interesting to see who is still on that team in August.
Yeah,
From that
it'll be
lineup.
very interesting. It'll be very interesting. But let's actually transition. I'm just going to kind of levy or throw out a couple divisions, and I'll let you bring up your future section. But let's talk about potential futures bets on divisions, and we'll just go but one by one instead of just kind of throwing out
Sure,
ones that we like.
sure.
The first division that I think is the most intriguing is the AL West because although the NL Central and the AL Central are both wide open because well, nobody's really winning games in those divisions outside of, or at least in the general scope of the season. The AL West is the exact opposite because right now, bringing it up the rear, obviously the A's, but right after that, you have the Seattle Mariners, who a lot of people were bullish on coming into the season. And if you kind of flipped this script of the Mariners, Angels, Astros, and then Rangers leading the way, if you flipped that and said this is how the season played out and the Mariners are winning this division right now, I don't think a lot of people would have been totally shocked. And just when you look at those numbers, you kind of look at the Rangers as an even pick 'em to win this division right now. The Astros are almost 2-1 your money, and then you have the Angels at 5-1 your money, and then the Seattle Mariners at 13-1. Who would you be saying has the best shot realistically, and also where's the best value at?
So, I'm just trying to pull up the which odds do you have in front of you, just so I can kind of
I just have DraftKings up, just kind of
okay.
general ones.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to pull up from DraftKings and try to get the trying to get my odds and things here. But look, in general, I think that apologies, folks. I'm trying to see if I can live get it up, but I can't. It's fine. Okay, so in that AL West, like I think that the look, the Astros are going to be a lot different when Jordan's there. I mean, it's a little bit from a value perspective. I think that there's absolutely value on the Astros. But then again, be honest, that Astros team has played more games than anybody else in the league over the last 5 years. That is the problem with playing really well. The Golden State Warriors have had the same issue. You get cluster injuries. I selfishly, like, I backed the Rangers a while ago. When they were 5-1. I just think that they have so much depth in that area. But look, if I was gonna try to bet for a team right now, and I really needed to do it, I'd probably look to the Angels, and the reason why being that team is in danger of losing Otani at the end of the season. If they're within striking distance of the division, I mean, even if they're not, they're probably going to buy or just do whatever it is they can to show, hey, we're winners and we can do this. Like we can do this, and give him more reasons to want to stick around and stay engaged the rest of the season before he breaks all the banks and gets the contract. So the team that I would buy. I mean, also, look, there's a lot of practical reasons also to buy that team right now. I think Reed Detmers is another one of those pitchers that nobody is talking about. The dude threw a no hitter last year, then got sent down to the minors. People have been, I feel like, are waiting for the shoe to drop on him, but he has been another guy who's lights out. I personally think that Mike Trout is hurt. I think Mike Trout's always hurt, but there's a lot of guys in that lineup that seem to step up and are trending up. The Brendan Drury's of the world, the Taylor Wards of the world, and Ohtani is the best player in baseball. I would buy the Angels in that division, just based around what it is that they could do to put some of those pieces together to kind of keep things moving. Because they're probably one of the probably can give you a good number, and you know that they're going to try to do it because they need to keep their star player engaged.
Yeah, and I'm actually right there with you. I think betting on the Angels right now is the play, and at least the play to say bet on them to make the playoffs, I think
Yeah.
is a great angle because when you look at just kind of how that lineup is performing, and ultimately with the Angels, that's what it's going to come down to is just how good this lineup can perform down the stretch. But they have three guys in the top 50 in terms of hard hit percentage over the past month, and none of those guys are named Mike Trout. They are Luis Rengifo, Taylor Ward, and obviously Shohei Ohtani. And when you look at their injury list and guys who are going to be coming back, you look at Anthony Rendon is on the 10-day IL. You look at Zach Neto. You look at Ben Joyce. You look at even Gio Urshela. Obviously, those last two aren't massive names in terms of their long-term success potentially, but they are contributing pieces and have had really good stretches already this season as well for them. So, yeah, man, I'm a definite buyer in the Angels right now. I also do think that they've been winning a lot of these games when Shohei Ohtani, when he was on the bump, just wasn't giving his best stuff. I think it's starting to turn around a lot for him right now, especially tonight. You know, he's just kind of looking at how he's performing against the Dodgers. They're doing well. You know, he's having a great game. And even across the board, you mentioned Reed Detmers, who I think under the hood is very good. You look at Griffin Canning, who has really turned it around for
Frank
them.
Canning's been really good.
Yeah, and they do have a farm system that can at least make some moves to potentially add a starter to this rotation. So I do think that they are a very optimistic bunch right now in terms of their outlook and especially in terms of just making the playoffs. But I'm right there with you and betting the Angels. And let's shine some light on another division here because there's a lot of interesting ones, obviously, but the one that I think is probably the maybe this I think has the most chance for fireworks down the stretch is going to be the NL West because right now the Padres are 8 to 1 your money. They're plus 800. And yeah, they are pretty far back, but they're not so far back where it's inconceivable. And you already mentioned it. Blake Snell, Joe Musgrove, these guys, they have starting Michael Waka, Yu Darvish, who has had a rough go as of late, but still is a guy who can turn it on down the stretch if he needs to. This is a rotation that has some obviously some firepower in it. Their lineup has a lot of firepower in it as well, and they're 8 to 1 your money. The Diamondbacks are about 4 to 1 or so your money, depending on where you look. The Giants are actually above the Diamondbacks at about 3.5 to your money, 3.5 to 1, and then the Dodgers are usually going to be carrying some juice as a favorite to win this division, which is just kind of buying into the Dodgers branding. But tell me, like, when you look at this division, you could really go with any of those four teams and make a real strong case for it, and I would be behind you. But where do you think? Who do you think realistically wins this NL West, and also where is the best value at?
Realistically, I think the Dodgers win the division just because that's just like I realistically just think that what's going to happen is the Dodgers will buy pieces that they need or they'll get healthy where they need it and they'll kind of beat some other teams in the submission. I also I mean I think that having a team that's leading the division with a top three offense and a 4-game lead and they're 4 to 1 to win the division, that's the Diamondbacks, is insulting and disrespectful. But look, the Padres, in terms of pitching ceiling, have probably the highest ceiling out of any team on there, and pitching is what gets people down the stretch. So, you can't bet three teams. So I would say to people, I would I would say that the Padres are probably a solid buy at what am I seeing now? It's 8-1, like you said, 8-1, just because of that ceiling. But I think if the Diamondbacks are to add an arm, I think that things could turn around, or think they could stay where they are. I mean, I think the thing is about the Diamondbacks is just like that disrespect that's being shown. Like they have a 4-game lead. They're 14 games over 500, and they are 4-1 to win the division. Come on. They have a guy who is a top three in Cy Young in Zach Allen. Despite he just pitched a gem on the road, even though we all wanted to fade him on the road. That's just that. I mean, you want to talk about value? That is 100% value right there. But the Padres could easily come out of this. I think as they have that ceiling. They have multiple guys who we would even consider MVP candidates at different times. And when all the guys are pitching, like that turnaround has been pretty fierce.
Yeah, 100% agree. And it blows my mind when you look at just the perception of the snakes. A lot of people think that they're just fraudulent. I don't understand where this hate's coming from. Obviously, they're having a trendy up year with a lot of young guys, so I can see that angle of maybe being turned off by the Diamondbacks right now. But man, Corbin Carroll is in the top 5 in MVP voting, let alone Rookie of the Year
That's so
talk. So
wild.
it's insane. And this lineup across the board has guys who can hit. Even guys who don't play on a daily basis can hit in this lineup. And they play in a stadium where balls are going to be flying, even in October. So I don't get it. I would definitely take the Dimebacks at some money, and I would also sprinkle a little bit on the Padres. What I don't buy at all is that the Dodgers should be carrying this type of value. I mean, when they get healthy in terms of their rotation, I still don't think it's elite the way it has been in past years. I mean, they don't have a single lights out guy right now, in my opinion. Clayton Kershaw is going to be Clayton Kershaw. He's going to be great, but I think we've already seen the best of Clayton. And Julio Urias, when he was healthy this year, wasn't really that inspiringly good. He was actually really bad. Their best pitcher right now is easily Bobby Miller. And if that's you're going to be the guy you trust, kind of like down the stretch and major playoff games, potentially even maybe even in a play-in game. Oh, that's laying your cards pretty heavy on the table right there. Um, so
They also
I'm
have the worst. They also have the worst bullpen in baseball.
right, right,
So
yeah, exactly. And I get it. Freddie Freeman, amazing. Will Smith, amazing. And there's guys throughout this lineup who are just amazing players. Mookie, JD, these are and Max Muncy once he gets healthy again. But man, that's relying on a lot of extra base hits. That's relying on a bullpen that's been absolutely uninspiring outside of Evan Phillips. And that's relying on a lot of starting pitching that just hasn't been the same kind of caliber of starting pitching for them so far this season. So definitely take the Padres. I would take anybody other than the Dodgers, and I could definitely see an angle
yeah,
for it. But I'm riding with the D-backs and I'm riding with the Padres to potentially
the
steal that
the
division.
Dodgers were also what are they? Because let me just see what insulting number they are. So the 125 right now. The Dodgers were minus 500 3 weeks ago, in that division, and I don't think that they've been in. I mean, they were probably, if anything, maybe a game up on first place. Um, look, do they have the capability to roll? Like they've also done this a lot of different years, but I just really with you on the fact that the first place team who has one of the best offenses in the league is a 4-1 dog to win their own division. That's all. That's it. If that's your one
Blasphemy.
takeaway, that's the thing. Like, show the snakes some respect.
100% agree. And last week, when we wrapped the pod, we just kind of had a topic or a question of the week. And as we kind of go into our last little segment here of just kind of wrapping up the pod, let's shine the spotlight on one player. So one individual player who in all of baseball history is just, we're thankful for this player. And it could even be somebody this year because this player made you a lot of money. He was just enjoy to watch, maybe just as a fan. Who is one player you want to, shine the light on? And I'll lead off just because
Sure, go
bumping
for
the
it. Go
mic.
for it.
Oh,
Let's
unprofessional. But
look at that.
I'm just gonna shine the light just because I am dropping this on you last second here. I'm
Sure.
gonna go with, and I hate to say this, but I texted you this I think earlier today.
Uh-huh.
Going with Kyle Hendricks. This
The
guy,
professor.
the professor. I mean, this guy has made me so much money over his career as a Cardinals fan. That kills me, but he's also killed the Cardinals, and he just kind of is even keel. You know exactly what you're going to get from him. He's going to be teetering on 7 innings pitched every single time out with an efficient pitch count, and probably one, maybe two earned runs, and so many ground balls. You're going to have the bases loaded maybe twice in the game, and no runs are going to come out of it because he'll turn it into a double play. This guy will make your heart beat fast and make you feel that pressure. But at the same time, in the back of your head, you're just like, I've been here before, and I kind of trust this guy a lot to get it done. That's how I feel about Kyle Hendricks. So, Kyle, if you ever end up seeing this clip, and I'm going to post this on social media for him, I hope he does, and just know that I'm grateful, and I would love a picture sometime, man. But yeah, Kyle Hendricks is definitely my guy. It's unmatchable at this point of how much he has made me so much happier as a better just back in his
Um,
starts.
I love that. I mean, look, there are guys that are historically great that I do love. But I will give some. I'm going to give some love right now. I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm going to give some love to a current Boston Red Sox and a former Dodger, Justin Turner. Justin Turner is quietly one of the best hitters in the league. He cashes every single total base prop that I ever ask him to do. He hits home runs when I ask him to do it, and they are always absurdly high numbers because no one seems to think that he can hit home runs. He does it all by the third inning, so that I never have to worry about it and sweat it the rest of the game. So I salute you, Justin Turner, for tonight. You cashed three props that I had on you by the third inning. You are a fantastic, upstanding individual for doing this. And like I just think that you bring some excitement there. You were great on my fantasy team when you were a Dodger. And now that you are in the AL and you are in the city that I live in, everyone loves you. But thank you for making me a lot of money on betting your hitting props across the board.
That's such a good one because even when he was going back to the Dodgers, I mean, the most overlooked talented guy you could ever find, just that in that ratio, right? Of
Yep.
having so much talent, yet people still talking about everybody around him for some reason. And I agree, man. Over the years, Justin Turner has cashed a lot of props for me. And I haven't even bet a prop with Justin Turner this year, which
Oh,
feels dirty. Yeah, it feels
yeah.
dirty. I need
Well, and he's 9 out of 10 in his hits, runs, RBIs, which as we exit, like the hits, runs, RBIs isn't necessarily something to always bet, but sometimes it helps give you a really good sense of how everyone else in the lineup is doing as well. In addition to this person, that's what makes it a really cool prop. Is that if you're a top of order guy and you're consistently cashing that, it means that guys behind you are consistently getting you in. If you're the middle of the order guy and you're consistently cashing it, it actually might be tied much more to you're causing this stuff to happen and you're getting RBIs and you're getting hits and on base. He does it consistently. He bats in the 2 hole, I believe, two or three, no, bats in the 3. But a lot of those guys in front of him, like, Verdugo's obviously been great and getting on base, but Justin Turner was constantly overlooked. I think he was the 6th most noticeable Dodger on those teams. And saluting him, I think, is extremely important right now.
Yeah, and last note, but you just brought up something really cool that the kind of the debate between betting the hits plus runs plus RBIs or and I'm kind of going off a little bit off what
No,
you
no, no.
said, but
This is good. This
yeah,
is really good. This is good. This is good.
total bases versus hits plus runs plus RBIs. People have asked me several times because maybe they just don't have the hits plus runs plus RBIs prop available to them
Sure.
on maybe if they just use one or two books, they just don't have it. And they've
Yeah.
asked me, what's a good substitute for doing that? And oftentimes I will lean towards the total bases, but I want to make a very clear differentiator on why you would bet one or the other. So if you are betting on a player who's in a very talented lineup, say like a lineup who's smoking the ball right now, like the Rangers or the Phillies, you want to be probably targeting hits plus runs plus RBIs and just eating that little bit of juice because when, like you said, if you can get a hit, a single, and guys behind you can hit a double, can take walks, can hit sack flies, just put the ball in play, you are capitalizing not only on that player's individual value and his ability to get hits and, get to home potentially or get multiple hits in a game, but you're also saying this lineup behind him, even if, it's a ninth inning heroic effort and he's 1 for 4 with a single, And all of a sudden, this lineup is so good that they can probably get him in. With total bases, if you just like an individual player in a lineup, say you're looking at trying to find a good
Paul
example.
Goldschmidt. Let's
Yeah,
use Paul
Paul
Goldschmidt.
Goldschmidt. Yeah, and every single other player in that lineup's just really not hitting, but you love an angle on Paul Goldschmidt, and he's smoking the ball, he's tattooing the ball. Bet his total bases, because if you don't have faith that the guys behind him can drive him in potentially for a run or even get on base in front of him for an RBI, the hits plus runs plus RBIs, you're really just banking on 2 hits, essentially,
Yep.
or a home run. With total bases, 1 hit, a double, a home run, anything, maybe even just 2 singles is going to cash you that prop, and you're going to get plus money more likely than not, or at least a lot better value than just betting hits plus runs plus RBIs. So that's just something to
Yep.
think about. If you're targeting an individual player, you don't really like the lineup, lean towards total bases. And if you do like you're targeting one player and you love the lineup, go hits plus runs plus RBIs and feel a little bit comfortable even eating that juice.
Yep. I totally agree. That's a good way to look at it. And another way to kind of build it is if you're gonna, sometimes you can use a total base prop as almost like a ladder to, if you really like love the hits, runs, RBIs. What I would probably recommend to folks is that if you're going to play any of the props in combination, don't have them all be juiced. Make a base prop that's sort of like almost like a portfolio. And so the way example of the way I'll do it is I'll use Jose Ramirez as an example because I do his thing a lot. I'll play a juiced hits, runs, RBIs because he gets on base, and Josh Naylor or Josh Bell are very, very good about getting him in. Also, Quan at the top of the lineup, he's very, very good about getting him in. So that little section of the lineup, I have a lot of faith in that happening. I then usually will find his total bases prop that is plus money, and then I do half of that on top of it if I want to kind of build a portfolio with one unit spread across these things. And if you want, you can do like you look at someone's stats, you might spread a little bit on the extra base hit or spread a little bit on the home run, and that kind of creates your portfolio so that at the base, the one thing that you are cheering for your thing that you paid tax, you paid VIG on, you want that one to hit. That will get you at the very least as break even. And if things go even better, then you get a little bit more on top of that from the plus money end. But you don't want to have is paying juice on the bases and juice on the other additional props, because then what happens is that you get wiped out on this because it happens way more than it cashes. It will happen that way. You've then lost money on multiple angles. So just as you're thinking about building it, pay attention to the lineup and don't buy multiple props for the same player that are that you are paying for. So
Right. And I do very something similar. I'll either do total bases and a home run, or I'll do hits plus runs plus RBIs and a home
yep.
run.
Yep. That's
And
exactly what I do. Yep.
and that's just kind of
Get them all
my
in one
snowball
swing.
effect and how I approach.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You can get them all in one swing.
but yeah, man, I think this was a really good episode. And guys, let us know in the comment section. Let us know on Twitter. Let us know what you guys are thinking about the podcast. And also, you guys can find the podcast now on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, really iHeartRadio, anything else you can think of. We are definitely going in the audio route as well. So not only on YouTube anymore, definitely if you want to use those other platforms and just kind of listen on your way to work, definitely do it because those help us out as well. But really appreciate you guys just kind of reaching out and showing love to this thing over the past 3 episodes. And we're just going to keep coming, man. This is baseball, and baseball season is full swing right now. There's nothing really competing against it, and it's going to be a fun time. But with all that being said, y'all, we will see you in a future podcast. Take it easy.